My brother-in-law recently filed for my sister's divorce after he caught her cheating on him with one of his friends. She had been acting strangely for a while, so he decided to look through her phone one night, and that was it. He moved out and filed for divorce. But regrettably, my parents tried to force me to postpone my wedding for my cheating sister, but they later regretted it after learning of my in-laws' wealth and influence. Ideally, it shouldn't have affected my wedding at all, because my sister and I aren't particularly close. But my parents decided to ask me to postpone my wedding for a full year, because my wedding would be extremely upsetting for my innocent parents. He found out just a little over a week before my wedding, and by the time he filed for divorce, there were only 7 days left until the big day. Sister, I don't understand why they believe she's innocent, because from what I understand, there is evidence that she was exchanging incriminating texts with her husband's friend. However, they believe it's just harmless flirting, and everyone does it, so it's not a big deal. From what I've learned so far, they had actually been planning to get together a few times, but the plans always seemed to fall through, most likely because my sister's bravery failed her. Whatever it was, she had been planning to see him regardless of whether she had actually gone out with him or not, because the planning was so awful. In my opinion, my brother-in-law is doing the right thing by divorcing, but my parents don't share this opinion because they believe my sister can never do anything wrong, which is why they had the gall to ask me to postpone to avoid upsetting my sister. We decided to postpone our wedding by a year. Everything had been paid for, and all the arrangements had been made, so it would be extremely expensive to cancel. But we weren't even thinking about it. When we told my parents that they wouldn't be attending if we got married, they began to threaten us. So my husband and I told them that it didn't really matter if they were going to. I chose to go ahead with my wedding because, to be honest, I'm not very close to my family. They were invited as regular guests and weren't going to receive any special treatment just because they were related to me by blood. In fact, I've never received any special treatment from them in my entire life, not even special. And they never treated me as well as they treated my sister. Now, my parents are furious with me because they believe that I lied by keeping my in-laws' true identities a secret from them. To put it in perspective, my husband's family owns a pharmaceutical company and is extremely wealthy. My husband is part of the family that works there. I purposely kept this information from my family because, well, let's just say, they are not the type of people I would want around wealthy relatives. My parents also own a hardware store, but for as long as I can remember, I don't know how to explain it. But they act like they do around anyone who is in a slightly higher tax bracket. They turn into the biggest weirdos and start groveling, probably in the hopes that someone will invest in their business because they have always been looking for people to help them grow. It has never been doing well. They only get enough money to live on, but never more. I've witnessed them attempt to do this with others, including some of our own relatives or their friends, at events, and it makes everyone around them feel really strange. Unfortunately, that has never worked. They just make people feel uncomfortable and strange because they make it so obvious. These wealthy people are not fools who will fall for their flattery. I used to feel ashamed and embarrassed to be associated with them whenever they started brown-nosing these people because I could tell that they were not only criticizing my parents, but also likely criticizing us because my sister would occasionally join in. I really didn't want that to happen with my husband and his family. So when our families first met, I made sure to tell everyone to keep their job descriptions modest, because the moment my parents realized what a large company they were all involved with, they turn on their charm right away and try to start flattering them, probably hoping to gain something from it. My husband and I have been together for 3 years, and he has met my family multiple times, so he knows how to act around them. He always made it seem like he was just an employee, so my parents treated him fairly normally. My family doesn't really care about my life, so they have only met my husband's family once. That we got engaged. So my husband's parents were cautious enough to minimize their involvement in the business during small talk. Since this pharmaceutical company has little to do with my parents' profession, they most likely did not connect the dots even after learning their last names, so we were safe. However, the pictures from our wedding ended up in my parents' possession because everyone in my husband's family reposted them. Someone chose to post them on the company's official social media accounts as well, which is how my parents learned about the family I had married into. They began texting and calling me the night of my wedding to confront me about it because they felt deceived and believed that I should have been honest with them about the type of family I was marrying. But I had deceived them. They accused me of lying to them about how important my husband and in-laws were to their business, because if the wedding was significant enough to be featured on the company profile, It meant that my in-laws were just regular people. By skipping my wedding, they had lost a great opportunity to start networking with people, make friends with my in-laws, and find business opportunities for growth. Were quite significant to the business, and my parents had finally connected the dots by searching for their last names online. They realized that this was a family business, and they were furious with me because I had not only been lying to them, but I had also allegedly been purposefully denying them business opportunities. They felt betrayed by me, and for the first few days following my wedding, I didn't even bother answering them because I only wanted to enjoy this new family stage. But when they arrived at my house 2 days ago and demanded answers for everything I had been ignoring, I was unable to ignore them any longer. My husband and I made it very clear to them that we owed them no answers, and that the only reason we had invited them in was to be courteous. But if they were expecting me to explain things or apologize to them, they were wasting their time after listening to us. My parents simply turned to me and started manipulating my emotions. They were obviously upset and didn't even try to hide it. My mother even started crying. I tried not to let it affect me, but it was difficult because they were bringing up old memories of how they had raised me, and they had certain expectations of me. At first, I didn't want to argue with them. I just wanted to let them talk and then move on. When they mentioned that they had always tried to be good parents to me and that this was how I had paid them back, I had to confront them about it. Because, from what I could recall, they had primarily only attempted to be good parents to my sister. And for me, they had only ever done the bare minimum. I then got into a heated argument with them about it, and after some time, they simply expressed their disappointment that I had cheated them out of a chance to get closer to such successful business people, and they said that the fact that I had deliberately done all of this and gone to such lengths to keep my husband's family hidden from them only served to highlight how ashamed I was of them. They also said that even if they had attended the wedding, it wouldn't have changed my feelings toward them, because I would still have been ashamed of them. I definitely made sure that even my engagement was a private and intimate affair so that people wouldn't find out. In addition to concealing my in-laws, these accusations made me feel ashamed of my family and my background, which was untrue. I wasn't ashamed of the fact that my family wasn't as wealthy as my husband's, but rather of the way they behaved around wealthy people. The fact that I was even attempting to defend myself rather than apologize to them showed them that they never really mattered to me. This victim mindset of theirs eventually got under my skin, and I lost my temper, so I told them to leave my place. I even tried to explain what was embarrassing, but they refused to listen and insisted that my embarrassment by them was a valid reason for their current anger. I had invited them into my house in the first place in the hopes that we could have a polite conversation and put an end to this, but that was never going to be possible with them. My parents began to leave after I said that, and my mother was still crying, but she did tell me that I had always felt ashamed of my family and believed I was too good for everyone, and now it was just coming to an end. Before they left, they told me that they regretted not going to the wedding, but more than that, they regretted wasting that time trying to talk to me, especially when it was obvious that my family was never important to me at all. On the surface, she accused me of being just as shallow and pretentious as I thought they were, but I thought I was different because I had a superiority complex. Before I begin the update, I would like to clarify a few points I made earlier. I'm not particularly close to my family, and that includes not just my parents and my sister, but the majority of my family as well. In fact, the only people invited to my wedding were a couple of my cousins and a few aunts. I'm wondering why Ida never properly introduced my parents to my in-laws and uncles with whom I have a good relationship, and they didn't tell my parents anything about my in-laws, even though they knew. They understood why I didn't want my parents to know, and they respected that. In any case, I had very few family members invited to my wedding, so it wasn't a huge deal for us to keep things private. Now, let's talk about how we are handling my parents. They are the ones who chose to skip my wedding. It's not like I had turned down their invitations or anything. They could still have gone if they wanted to, but they felt that supporting my sister during her divorce was more important now. As you guys mentioned, we have decided to sever all ties with my parents because we don't really need this kind of negativity in our lives. They can bear the consequences of their own behavior, but I don't have to feel sorry for them at all. My husband and I are going on our honeymoon in a few days, and when we return, we're even moving into a new house. My in-laws gave us this as a wedding present, and it was completely unexpected, but it came at the perfect moment, because my parents couldn't bother us by visiting our home, even if they wanted to, because we are going to make sure that they don't get a hold of our new address. In fact, We intend to keep it a secret for a while. We're probably only going to share it with a few of our closest friends, and not with my family yet. However, my in-laws have been really supportive of everything I'm going through right now, including my family. And when they learned that my parents had visited my house to talk to me, they even offered to I was married to my husband and proud to be a part of this family, not only because they are wealthy, but also because they are genuinely good people, which is a combination that is very difficult to find these days. Therefore, I did not have a problem with the post staying up. And now that my parents had discovered it and were bugging me about it, I felt no need to take it down, because even removing the post would encourage gossip. I didn't see the point. More importantly though, I didn't want my parents to believe that they were so important that we had to remove the post. They had been texting and calling me, but last morning I stopped them by blocking them. I also blocked my sister for precautionary reasons because even though she hadn't gotten in touch with me yet, I knew that my parents would start using her to text. For those of you who were wondering, my sister was obviously not at the wedding either. I had also mentioned in my original post that she and I had never been close growing up because she had always been a bit of a brat. And as we grew older, we simply grew apart because we were no longer forced to live in the same house. It wasn't as if we were on bad terms. So she had been invited, but I guess she chose not to attend after the divorce was filed, and I was okay with that. However, I objected to my parents' decision to demand that I postpone my wedding by a full year, because she was divorcing because she had cheated. I'm not sure if my sister was the one who incited our parents to do that, but I knew she would always support our parents, and hoped, since she is our parents' child, and always has been, it would be futile for her to act honorably. In any case, I don't really communicate with anyone from my family at the moment, with the exception of those who attended my wedding. Of course, I have stayed in touch with them and instructed them to keep me informed about anything my parents are doing. That might worry me. Thus far, I haven't heard anything amusing, but I'm just crossing my fingers that nothing happens while I'm on vacation, because I would really hate for my parents to ruin something that I have been planning and looking forward to for so many months now. I can never be too sure with them, because I don't think they will stop at nothing to try and make me look like the bad guy in this situation. Because the last time we spoke, they were pretty serious about how disappointed they were in me, my husband, and I returned from our honeymoon a few days ago. And during our time away, my parents did not try to do anything. I suppose that was only because they were waiting for us to return. Earlier today, I received a call from my mother-in-law, who sounded very concerned and told us both to keep quiet and not do anything for a few weeks. In any case, hopefully they won't do anything. Come over as soon as you can, because it looks like my parents showed up at their house without any warning. I'm not even sure how they found out, because my in-laws are quite private, but they must have had their ways. In any case, that wasn't the main concern I had at the time, because the most embarrassing thing was that they had come to discuss me and what I had done. And since they were the family's adults, they needed to discuss how I don't know why my parents felt comfortable acting in such a way, because I'm an adult and not a misbehaving teenager, and even if I were, they should have handled this issue as my parents and not brought it up with my in-laws. I suppose they knew for sure that my in-laws would get in touch with us, and we would have to come so they could deal with it. Our behavior has been disappointing, so that we don't repeat it in the future. Be able to get in touch with me, which and is why they picked this particular time, most likely because they knew we were on our honeymoon and would return around this time. One thing is certain though, someone we trust has been talking to my parents and informing them of my activities, which is not going to fly with me. I'll have to deal with that later, because today was all about my parents and what transpired at my in-laws' house. My husband and I hurried to his parents' house to keep things from getting worse, because it was embarrassing that this was happening in the first place. When we arrived, my parents were sitting comfortably in their living room, acting as though it were their own house, and they were making my in-laws feel uncomfortable by being too friendly, as they usually do. My mother-in-law had just opened the door for us. Even though I was really upset and had to use all of my energy to keep myself from yelling at my parents, I chose to remain calm and remained silent, smiling awkwardly at whatever my parents were trying to say to him. I told them that it was really not acceptable for them to show up at my in-laws' house in this manner, especially since the situation we were dealing with did not even involve. They said they had already tried that strategy, but it hadn't worked out well, and now they knew that I would show up with my husband if they visited my in-laws, which is why they did this, which I hated to do. If it was between me and my parents, there was really no reason for them to bring my in-laws into this without any justification. If they wanted to talk to me, They could come to my house and talk it out with me directly. They were right about that. But it really doesn't matter, because they should respect my decision to not speak to them and not try to bother me, especially considering that they have always put me last and didn't even show up for my wedding. It took a lot of courage to try to paint me as the bad guy in a situation like this, where they were obviously not the victims, and they claimed to have visited my in-laws. I had to tell them as politely as possible that I had no interest in working things out with them, and that I was perfectly okay with not clearing the air right now, since I just wanted some space from them. I tried to be calm, but I think they could tell by the tone of my voice that I was really angry and was making a lot of effort not to lose it. They knew that we would come over so that we could all talk about this as a family and sort it out. My parents started criticizing my in-laws, saying things like, "This is what we meant, this is what we have to deal with," and just being weird in general. Fortunately, my in-laws defended me almost immediately, telling them that I had good reason to need some space away from them and that they should respect my boundaries rather than imposing their presence on me. Let it go. My parents were quite surprised when that occurred, because I did not anticipate my in-laws supporting me. They became even more shocked when my in-laws informed them that they had waited for us to arrive and had done everything in their power to handle this civility. However, now that we were all together, they wanted to let my parents know that they did not believe I had done anything wrong, and that, now that I was a member of the family, they would fully support me in anything. I did. Even if I decided not to have any kind of relationship with my parents, they would also respect that and expect them to do the same if they wanted me to be happy. I suppose my parents did not anticipate my in-laws to be so forthright after we arrived, and perhaps they were shocked, or perhaps they did not want to offend them for whatever reason, but they chose to depart right away without saying a word. Well, not exactly silent, as I could still hear them muttering to themselves, but that they kept to themselves. Fortunately, after they left, we sat down and talked with my in-laws, who informed me that my parents had been strange and needy, which was to be expected. They also said that they had been doing everything in their power to turn them against me, making me appear to be the bad guy, but it had failed because they already knew everything. After that, we also left, and I'm hoping that my parents have learned their lesson because, hey everyone, this was just an embarrassing update. 3 weeks have passed since my parents arrived at my in-laws' house and attempted to persuade them to agree with them, but it did not work. Nothing significant happened until this morning, when my sister contacted me. We are currently moving houses, so I've been very busy, which is why I hadn't been able to answer the phone when she called. I checked my phone and saw that I had 10 missed calls from an unknown number that was most likely a burner phone, as well as numerous messages from her. Basically, she was telling me to answer the phone because she wanted to discuss how I was treating our parents, how I was destroying the family, and how our parents had been miserable for the past few weeks since I had embarrassed them in front of my in-laws. After reading those texts, I realized that this number belonged to my sister, and I chose not to call her back. But I did not block her because I wanted to hear her side of the story. I texted her back, telling her that none of that was my fault, and that if they truly believed it was, then they were completely insane. I explained to her that our parents had purposefully skipped my wedding for her sake, and that they had humiliated themselves by showing up at my in-laws' place, accountable for that mess. After I texted her back, she sent me a lengthy message claiming that I had caused them a great deal of distress, and that they were already struggling to cope with the fact that she was divorcing her husband, even though she didn't actually cheat on him. They were already going through a tough time, so I chose to make it worse by calling me callous, selfish, and other derogatory terms. I told her that this family needs a serious lesson in accepting responsibility, and that I'm happy that they're all currently dealing with the fallout from their actions, because it's important for them to understand that they can't get away with anything. I went on to say that she, more than anyone else, needed to understand that I was clearly referring to the fact that she had cheated but was acting innocent, so she was understandably very upset about that. Update 4. Hey guys, it's been almost a year since I got married, and I just thought I'd post a little update here to let you know that I'm done with them. They started berating me via text and other things, and I blocked that number. I then went back to ignoring them completely, and I won't be responding to them ever again, because this was the last conversation I had to have with any of them. I said whatever I had to say. What I've been doing, guys, is that I haven't spoken to my parents since I moved, which has been a huge relief. I also recently discovered that one of my cousins had been talking to my sister about what I was doing at the time, and I cut them off. This is what actually made me decide to post here. It turns out that the cousin was very close to my sister and couldn't help themselves. We don't talk to that cousin anymore because they felt they were doing something good by attempting to help a family get back together. We also don't have anything to do with my family other than the few people I trust. My sister moved to a different city a few months after her divorce was finalized, and my parents sold their store to move away with my sister and start a new life. I genuinely hope they stay out of my hair, but I'm not sure how long I can keep them from contacting me because my husband and I are planning to start a family. I'm sure they'll be back once I announce my pregnancy, but we'll deal with that when we get to it. For now, we're just taking care of our finances. My spouse and I recently commemorated our first anniversary together, and we are quite content with our lives and are also eager to have children in the near future.